I'm not ashamed.
How bad was the hail in Egypt? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Exodus on walking through the Bible.
Of his word, the glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Exodus chapter 9. We're going to be reading from verses 22 to 26. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Exodus chapter 9, beginning at verse 22. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand toward heaven, that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt, on man, on beast, and on every herb of the field throughout the land of Egypt." And Moses stretched out his rod towards heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and fire darted to the ground. And the Lord rained hail in the land of Egypt. So there was hail and fire mingled with hail, so very heavy that there was none like it in all the land of Egypt, since it became a nation. And the hail struck throughout the whole land of Egypt, all that was in the field, both man and beast. And the hail struck every herb of the field and broke every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, there was no hail. In this episode, we continue our look at the seventh plague God inflicted upon Egypt as a result of Pharaoh's refusal to let the children of Israel go, the plague of hail. Before this plague, we saw 6 plagues. The plague of the water of the Nile turning into blood, the plague of an overabundance of frogs brought out of the Nile, the plague of lice or ticks, the plague of flies, the plague of pestilence or disease causing the death of all cattle in the field, and the plague of boils, skin ulcers that turn into running sores. Pharaoh was given a chance after each of these plagues to obey the word of the Lord, but after each time he refused, and so God continued plaguing Egypt. In our last episode, we had God sending Moses and Aaron to Pharaoh, demanding that Israel be let go. However, if Pharaoh would disobey, a plague worse than any of the ones before would be inflicted upon Egypt. That last statement is truly saying something, because the 6th plague, the plague of boils, was said to be very grievous. This plague would be a plague of hail, the likes of which Egypt had never seen before. Hail is, of course, coming with thunderstorms, and is rain that has been frozen and has formed into balls or irregular lumps of ice. These balls of ice can range from the size of a pebble to the size of a tennis ball. A hailstorm can be quite damaging to anything caught out in it. The hailstorm promised by the Lord would evidently produce hail even bigger than normal, hail that was able to kill anything caught out in the field. Some of the servants of Pharaoh believed the words of the Lord and brought their cattle and servants in out of the field, while the rest did not. In today's reading, we have God actually bringing the plague upon Egypt. Moses was to stretch out his hands toward heaven so that hail would come forth on every man, beast, and herb of the field that was in the field. Moses did so, and the Lord sent thunder, hail, and fire that darted towards the land. This was quite a thunderstorm. The Bible says that God also sent fire that darted towards the land. What is being talked about here? The fire is what we would call lightning. Lightning is a discharge of electricity usually present during a thunderstorm. When something is hit by lightning, it can be set on fire, as evidenced by the many forest fires that are present around the globe today. This hailstorm was just as God predicted. It was the worst hailstorm that Egypt had ever seen. Some people today try and bring this storm down to a mere natural phenomenon. And while hailstorms are a natural phenomenon, the intensity here is not. Moses said that this would be the worst hailstorm Egypt had ever seen. How could Moses have known that? He didn't have weather radar or modern equipment to measure the hailstones in the storm. From what we read, Moses couldn't even see the storm from where he was standing, for God predicted that it would come the next day. No, this storm had to be from God, with God using something that naturally occurred and brought it about by the word of his power, and thus increased the intensity in order to show his power to the Egyptians. That we have tried to reduce this story down to mere weather shows us the depths of how hard hearts of man exist today, in that he is unwilling to believe the testimony of the people who were actually there, testimony that has been handed down through the ages, preserved for us by the hand of God. When the hail came, everything that was in the field was struck and died, just as the Lord said. The hail also struck every herb of the field and broke every tree of the field, meaning that the hailstones were big enough to break tree branches. The plague truly was terrible and did strike to the heart of Pharaoh. Pharaoh was the mighty king of Egypt and had immense power, yet even he was powerless against this hail and would have died had he gone out into the field. However, again we see the mercy of God, for he did not inflict the plague on Goshen, where his people Israel lived. We'll see Pharaoh's reaction in the next episode. With that, our time is up for today. Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Exodus chapter 9, verses 27 to 35, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
I'm not
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.
of his cross.